Hey everyone, I want to give a tutorial and an overview of the Respell platform, walking through each of the steps and showing off some of the functionality. We're going to be remixing a spell that is currently a template, and hopefully they'll show you the ropes on how you can use us to automate different parts of your business. So before we start, quick context, Respell does no-code AI workflow automation. Specifically, we focus on agentic workflows. Now, this means that you are building workflows that automate your work, but specifically, they use agents and they can also be used inside of agents. We're going to show you some of the basics on how to uh, just use the editor and create different spells, share them with your team, and then a quick preview on data sources. So this is the dashboard. When you first log in, it'll be pretty much empty. There's not going to be any recents. And there's a few buttons here, but we're going to jump into making a spell. First thing I want to show you though is there's a couple places where you can find spells. There's My Spells. This is where you have all of the spells that you as a user have created inside of your workspace. You can see I'm in the Respell internal workspace. I can have different teammates involved with me, but this is the screen for only the spells that I have created. Now, I can also go to all workspace, and these are spells that everyone in my workspace can access. So if you want your whole team to be able to run some spell or to see the results of one of your spells, then you can do that here. And I also have a few custom teams. We have demos, templates, and testing. These all contain a few different spells that are for different people in the team. You can also use it for organization, although um, you can invite different members and make sure the team has all the people that you need. So now let's jump into a spell before I explore the rest of the dashboard. And I'm going to look at this one right here, the company compliance analysis. So let's click on it. This is a template that you can use, by the way. I will link it in the description of the video. But really what it does is every once in a while, you might need to know if a vendor or if a partner is SOC 2, HIPAA, ISO 27001 compliant. And finding that information can be really annoying, especially if you do all of those, find all those different frameworks and whether they're compliant with them or not. And you have a big long list of vendors. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in a moment, but you can see that we enter the company name, the company domain, and then we just select a couple of the frameworks that we want to check on. And when we run it, it will trigger the agent. I'll show you what the results look like in a moment. Um, you'll be able to see uh, a quick report on whether it's compliant with each of these. So if we go into history, is where you see all your historical spell runs. I've done a few on this one to test it out with different companies. And I think the last one was Respell. Yep, it was. Um, and so I entered, okay, company name, company domain, and the frameworks I wanted. And I got out that, yep, we are indeed SOC 2 compliant, but we don't have GDPR, HIPAA, ISO, and any other ones. We're not technically compliant, but we do have a lot of work done towards those. If you have questions, definitely reach out to us about our compliance. And then we also have full research report, which is where this summary is sourced from, right here. Now, the way we got it is pretty simple. If I go to edit in the top right, then we get put into the editor for a spell. Now we're going to make a new one pretty soon. I just wanted to show you this one. Every spell starts with a start step. This is what kicks off the workflow. Every step afterwards has to be connected to it. Otherwise, it won't run because it's not started. You can see the inputs that we have here that we entered earlier. So the name, domain, and compliance frameworks. And what we do right after that is immediately we send that info into the research agent. You can see it right here. I renamed it to research compliant to make it a little more easy to find. But the research agent is an agent that we've built in-house to make it easy to find information on the web. So it will write some search queries, search the search engines. It will read and crawl a website, go to different links, and it's meant to be just like a human when it does its research. So if I click into that step, then I can see that we have a query here. It's saying, okay, just what's the instruction? Check if it's compliant. Don't make assumptions. don't want to accidentally say that somebody's compliant when they're not. And then we just give the info to about that company to look um, look into. And so from here, that's all we need to do for the research agent, and it just goes and does its thing. And I'll rebuild this in the spell that we make from scratch in a moment. The compliance uh, summary that we want, it looks like this that we got at the end. That's just using AI, specifically GPT-4, and a prompt like this. So I just put this in, I did a one shot, and we're just fine. And we were good to go from there. The display step is how you show values back to you. So there's a couple different ways to run spells. This is what's called a manual spell because I'm the one actually entering the information, like you saw in the form before. The display step will say, okay, I want to know about this information because we have a lot of things here. We have all these different like pills, and these are called variables, but I don't really want to like go looking through all these. So I say, okay, I only want to see the full research report. That's going to be this one right here that comes from the research agent. And I also want to see the summary, which comes from right here, this response. And so that's the basic spell. I'm not going to explore the editor too in depth right now. There's a lot to it, and it's extremely powerful. That's going to be saved for another video, but I am going to show you what it's like to build this spell from scratch. So let me go into the blank editor and we'll get started. So if I go all the way back, I'm just going to create it right in here in this team here. I'm going to click on new spell. And first thing I need to do is add that start step that we talked about. Now, like I mentioned, there's manual spells, but there's also triggered spells. So if you're familiar with other workflow platforms, you might have run into this concept before, where when something happens in another app, it kicks off that workflow. We support that as well, and we have quite a few integrations. And if you ever have a question about integrations or you want one, a new one that we don't have yet, just let us know. It's really quick for us to add integrations as long as the integration provider makes it easy for us. And we're always glad to do it for customers. In this case, we're going to make a manual spell though. I'm going to switch it back and we want to enter those inputs. So for a manual spell, I need some inputs so that there's something to fill out, or sometimes you may even not need an input, but in this case we do. So we need, let's say, the company name. I don't need a description, don't need a placeholder. These are optional. You can see anything that's required is going to have that little asterisk right there. And I do want it to be required. Great. Okay. And then I'm just going to say the website URL as well. So these are things that we pass into the research agent to make sure it knows where to look for information, has some basic context. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. We have a lot of different types for variables. Now, right now, this doesn't change too much, but what it does is it helps me validate that the enter I'm entering is actually correct. And some steps only take some types of variables. So getting this set to the type that you actually want is actually going to help you out a lot later on. So that's a URL and we're good to go. Now, the last thing is we want, actually, yeah, I'm going to leave it as that. We had the, which frameworks we picked before, and I'll show you what it looks like to make a dropdown, but we don't need that for now. I think I might just put in the prompt this time. So if I said this was the compliance frameworks and I made this a dropdown, I can create some options here. So I could say this is where I would put the SOC 2, the HIPAA, etc. And then you could also make a multi-select by just flipping that on, and then you're good to go. But in this case, I don't really want a dropdown. I'm just going to put it straight in the prompt, and then we're good to go. Wait, forgot to delete that. All right. Next thing we want to do is, if you remember, is a research agent, and we're just going to I'm going to use the prompt I had before and just paste that in. Make sure it's all formatted correctly. And you can see that the information down here, we need to insert the variables. So putting variables into options is probably one of the most common things you're going to do in the editor. We have the company name and the um, domain, which we called website URL in this case. And I'm just going to say this is going to be SOC 2. But then company name, if you click on this up here, it says use variable. And what that lets you do is any step that's before the one that you're currently on, you can use any of these variables. So we have some global ones that's for every single spell, it's available everywhere. But also in the start step, I can click on that right there. And then I can use anything from here. So I'm going to just click company name and it's inserted right away. And that's how you pass information from one step to another. So as you go down the line, you're going to get more outputs available. In this case, the research agent gives you the research report. And so in the next step, you're going to see that we use that in the same way that we do here as well. And that's going to be URL. Great. Now you can see there's a variable type mismatch. That's totally fine. You can ignore it for this case because under the hood, we'll do our best job to convert it to the right type. It's saying that because this is a plain text, you can see by the icon here, like a plain text option, that, oh, you're passing in a URL. That's a different type. But in this case, I know that this is fine. And you might also notice when we hover over the website URL, we have a domain and a path. And these are called transformations. That'll be a deep dive inside of another video, but the thing to know about here is that some variables can be converted to other ones without adding a whole other step. So if you want to convert a URL to just a domain, which would be, for our website, just the Respell part before respell.ai. It would be the respell.ai part. And then if you only want the path, which would be respell.ai / whatever else comes afterwards, you could do that here. And every type has a couple different transformations that you can use as well. In this case, we don't need any. So then after the research agent, we're going to just want to get that quick summary so we can at a glance see what we're compliant with. So I'm going to say generate text with AI. This is how you use an LLM. I can choose multiple different models. We support all the main powerful ones out of the box. And I can specify the prompt here, or I can click on advanced mode and modify all the different options as well. So I can modify system instruction, that's pretty popular, or the temperature, max tokens, whatever you feel the need to. We don't actually need that for this one. It's actually a fairly simple prompt. So I'm going to, again, paste it in and make sure the formatting is correct. We're only looking for SOC 2, so I'm just going to do that. And we need to insert that research report. So you can see now that I'm in this one, and we're after the research agent, I can now use the research report from it. So there we go. All right. One more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, actually first, these are great, but this doesn't really tell me what I'm actually doing. So I actually want to rename this. So if I click on the step and I go up here, you can see I can click to edit its label. So I'm going to say this is summarize the compliance, and then this one's going to be research compliance. And then, especially for larger spells, that's going to save you a ton of time. And if you have multiple generate texts, sometimes it can be kind of hard to see, which one am I inserting variables from inside of an option. So that helps you out. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is click on display because I actually want the value shown back to me. So let's say in this case, I want the summary. Again, the description is optional, but for outputs, I need to set a value. Doesn't really make sense if I don't have anything to show back. So I'm going to use the variable here, summarize compliance, and then there we go. And I'm going to do the same thing for the full report, and I'm going to use the research compliance step right there. All right, fantastic. And that's us rebuilding the spell. Now, there's a lot we can do from here. One thing I thought about was, okay, if the maybe like after this, I want to send an email to myself. If I schedule the spell to run every week or so to keep all my vendors in check, or every month, make sure they didn't lose their compliance, which would be a violation of our policies, then I could say, click the plus and go to send email. And then from my own Gmail account, I might send myself an email, send it to some shared inbox or whoever's on our compliance team, etc. And same thing here. I would just need to connect the my Gmail account, which is super simple, and then enter the details. But I'll save some working with integrations for another video, and there's quite a few you can work with. Now, I want to rename my spell, so research compliance number 2. There we go. Sorry, it's just a little bit cut off there. And then the next thing I'm going to want to do is test my spell. So when I'm done creating it, or if I'm like halfway through and I want to see what's going on so far, I can click on test and I can enter the information. I'm not going to run it right now because the research agent can take a little bit of time, but I am going to publish it and then run it there so you can see what it gives us. So I'll just enter the inputs here and then click test. And it looks exactly the same as if we run it out of the spell page once we published it. All right. Some other things to know about the editor. So you can add steps like you've been seeing me do with the plus button here. You can also insert them between different steps using that. So if I do condition step, well, that one didn't insert between because condition step needs a path first. Let me try that again. Just do this. If I do generate text, it just pops it in between. So that's an easy way instead of like deleting the link and then moving things around. It does it for you. You can also drag in from the sidebar here. So if you're looking for a step here, I don't know, say Slack to send a, oh, whoops, I need to go into integrations. Send a Slack message. I can just drag it in right there. We'll go over a tour of all of the different steps in a different video, and we'll do a couple different tutorials on the most common ones, such as generate text with AI, research agent, condition steps, stuff like that. But for a quick overview, we have display and condition in Flow, and a few more interesting ones to come in the next few weeks. Condition lets you filter or choose a different path to go down, so you get some very complex workflows. Text is everything you need to work with text fields. So if you want to extract some information from a document or just a paragraph, you can do that here, or you can classify that text into certain different categories. You can also summarize it. This is just an out-of-the-box summarization step that we've made for you, so you don't have to, it's a very common use case, you don't have to write, summarize this paragraph multiple times. And then combine text is how you can combine different values into one. It's mostly used as a utility block. If you're often using values that are text and they are combined together in a very specific way, then you can just use this to simplify that process. And then there's a bunch of file stuff too. So we support 5 different file types. There are documents, spreadsheets, images, audio files, and video files. And you can convert between them in this one. It also has some utilities for data sources, which will be in a different video, but I'll give you a quick tutorial on the dashboard in a minute. Web and code are probably some of the most commonly used steps. So the research agent is very versatile. We just saw us use it. You're about to see it, how it works. But then you can also search Google directly, read a website directly, and for the IT teams or software developers, you can make an API request, query a database, or write some custom code, and we'll run it for you. So those are all available to you. We could try to give you all the primitives if you need them. And then finally, we have a bunch of integrations. And so if you go through here, we have about 40 plus services, adding a few every week. So if you have an integration request that we're missing or you'd like to see on Respell, then you can always go down here or just click on the chat bubble right there and let us know what you want. Like I mentioned before, we're very quick to add them, and we love when we get requests from users. That's how we drive almost all of our roadmap. All right. So we have just gone through quick editor tour, and now I'm going to publish this spell. All right. So the reason why you publish a spell is because that's how you get to use it from different parts of the app. So I can run it directly, like we mentioned, and I'm going to kick that off right now. So I'm going to start with Respell, and we're going to look at it as it runs for a little bit. So as a reminder, we're setting the research agent to look into whether we have SOC 2 compliance. And you can see here that the research agent is doing its work. So you can see its live thoughts as it's happening. And when it's finished, it's going to return the results back here. While we let that run, then you can see there's a couple different tabs in here. We looked at the history tab earlier. You can see all your different spell runs, and click through, see all the inputs and outputs, and also what happened in each step. That's what we call the activity of a spell. And then you can go to bulk run to run a spell on a spreadsheet. So if you have a spreadsheet, like I mentioned, of a bunch of vendors that you want to evaluate, but you don't want to have to enter their values every time. If you have a spreadsheet with um, the website URL and the company name, you can just upload that, match those to the inputs from the columns, and then send it off to the races, and it'll go through every single row and give the report back. So that's really helpful and very commonly used for phone call automation, research reports, and a bunch of other use cases. Um, Insights shows you a chart on just how often it's run. Not very useful since we literally just created this spell. But when you are seeing over time, you want to see how often it's used, especially for triggered spells. This is pretty essential. And then finally, you can call the spell via an API as well. There are a couple different ways to use the API if you are trying to integrate into your app or connect it with different systems that you have up and running. Then we give you the code right away. This is copy pastable, just as is. I'm going to switch my API key, so don't worry about trying to use it. But then you can start the spell using this, and this is what the output's going to give you. You're going to get your outputs right there. All right. Now let's see what the run came back with. So we got the full report right here. This is kind of just the agent's thoughts on what it found, and it usually includes citations. If it isn't including citations, just put it in the research query. Hey, make sure you set your sources, and it'll do that. And it looks like it found that we were SOC 2 compliant. Nice. You can always go down to the bottom at the steps and see what happened in each of them. So in this case, here's the research report. I mean, we are outputting the data from both the steps here, so it's not that useful. We can see it right up here. But if you have a really big spell, then you can always see exactly what happened step by step as it went along. All right. Now, once we publish a spell, that's pretty much it. You can use it with run, bulk run, or the API. We have a couple other ways to use it coming very soon. I'm particularly excited about the Slack extension, where you can run the spell directly from Slack, and that should speed up a lot of you don't have to go all the way to Respell to run your spells. Automation should be where you want to use them and where your team can see the results as well. All right. Now, if I go back, so we have explored the home dashboard really quickly. We looked at different teams and explored the My Spells and All Workspace teams. We looked at a spell page and went through all the different tabs there. We looked at the editor, what steps are available. We made a spell from scratch. And now I want to show you data sources. So data sources is kind of a embedded file store repository. If you don't know what that means, that's totally fine. What it means is that I can semantically search over my files, and I can do it in integrate a few different sources. But for example, in this case, I've uploaded a few different documents about marketing. So if I just type in marketing, it'll very quickly find the closest matching based on the intent or the the semantics of this search query. So if I wanted to know, let's say we have a report about common user issues, and I can't remember exactly what I'm searching for, but I know that users are having issues with authentication. Then it'll find anything that matches authentication or login or sign up or things of that nature. So this is really powerful, and you can bring this data back into your spells to do what's called retrieval augmented generation, RAG. And we'll have a whole video and a whole guide on how to do RAG effectively and what it can do for you. But it's most helpful for, let's say, like a support use case where you want to look up similar tickets that have been answered before to inform that response if you're auto-generating the responses. You can add a few different sources. So you can drop in some local files that you have handy, PDFs, CSVs. We support a bunch of different types. Or you can sync a Google Drive individual files or folders, and then Notion pages as well. Like I said, we'll go over these in a different video, but I just wanted to make sure that you know that data sources is available for you on the team plan or hire. All right, so that is pretty much all of Respell I want to go over. If you do end up getting stuck, then you can always reach us at the chat bubble down here or at support@respell.ai. We love talking to customers. It is why we built the company. So please reach out to us if you have any questions or any requests or feature requests. That drives our roadmap, and we're always happy to reprioritize things if you really need them for some kind of use case. If you need some help looking at or building spells or figuring out like what kind of use cases, what can I actually do with this kind of tool, I know we're very big and complex, so we want to try to demystify as much as we can for you. This is where you can go to templates, and we have a bunch here for you to use. We're always adding many more after our redesign. We've been just rapidly going at it. So if you have questions about use cases, let us know, and we can maybe even make a template directly for you. Well, that's all for this tutorial. Hopefully this helps. We're going to be having many more guides coming out soon, but excited to chat with you and see what use cases you have, and best of luck.